Now, I'm gonna be honest. I had no idea what to expect going into Trigger's cyberpunk world. I remember playing Cyberpunk 2077 at my cousin's house on his RTX 3080 and just spending hours prowling around Night City, looking at the lights far above Arasaka and watching the cherry blossoms illuminated under the stars. And when the first trailer dropped, I was really excited, but with a grain of salt. See, I like Studio Trigger, I like them a lot. They've come out with some real bangers in the past, and their animation talent, particularly in fight sequences, is simply astounding. But one thing I never really got with Trigger was that super deep storytelling I was looking for. If you like Trigger's writing and think their shows have a great story, more power to you, absolutely. But for me, the often loud, over-exaggerated, and not to mention sometimes very lewd presentation, well, it just didn't really hit me the way it hit so many others. But maybe that's just me. In any case, Cyberpunk Edgerunners is a show that is sexy, beautiful, sad, exciting, cinematic, and also sentimental in all of the right ways. So let's sit down and talk about what makes this show an absolutely great experience. First off, we open with David Martinez, a street kid attending Arasaka's Shishi Corpo school. Despite his rebellious attitude, he's managed to get straight A's until he's caught trying to hack for new updates in the system without paying. Not long after, he and his mother are caught in a traffic accident, and she's put on life support, only to slip away a day or two later. And let me tell you, the depiction of apathy in this world is brutal. It gave me chills when the trauma team arrived, and as you saw David's expression change from relief to panic, it was clear things were going to take a dark turn. They take out this sort of scanner as she's just lying there, and instead of helping her, they scan for her insurance. And then they leave her there when it's discovered she isn't covered. I think the worst thing about this scene is the relatability I harbored with David in realizing that this society just didn't give two shits about him or his mom. As I stated earlier in the video, in many cases if you need saving, it's only available for a price. And if you can't fork out the money and make someone rich to justify operating, then simply get ready for a funeral. David has lived in Night City for his whole life, being bullied by corpos and watching his mom and him being crushed beneath the weight of society and the curse of being marked as a quote-unquote gifted student. And when David's mother passes away, he finds himself completely alone. No one to trust, no one to believe, no one to help him. Well, until Lucy arrives anyway. Lucy came from a life without parents, but she's passionate, she wants to be loved, and after getting to know her, it's clear that without family, friends, or lovers, Lucy's just not herself. She needs people. She hacks the system, helps her team get what they need for jobs, but in many ways, she's more vulnerable emotionally than David himself. One of the things I came to accept was that David suffers trauma, but he tends to hold things in. When his mother died, when Maine died, he was broken up at the time, but eventually accepted that life must go on, even if the one you love isn't with you anymore. And I think one of the main things that allows David to rationalize his move past grief is his drive and his motivation to strike back against Arasaka and Millitech and the corrupt governmental body ruling over Night City. He takes his grief and drowns it out with implants, aiming to get stronger so he can fight back. But inevitably, even David can't forget his past completely, and things catch up with him, slowly beginning to push him over the edge. Now, in a lot of ways, I've seen the characters of this anime before. Lucy is the hacker, David is the small kid with an attitude for revenge and an arc to grow as a character. Kiwi is the backup, and Maine is the mentor who ultimately sacrifices himself so that the others can live and eventually take his place. And Rebecca is like if Hatsune Miku snorted a little bit too much cocaine while on a heavy LSD trip. This is alongside the fact that she is, in many ways, the endearing little sister of the group. And I think using these character bases is fine because every one of these people is super memorable in their personalities and the diversity of their designs. Lucy has ghostly white hair and the accents in her eyes, not to mention that body. Maine is, all things considered, a complete tank, part robot and all testosterone from the ground up. Seriously, this guy's huge. David has his spiky hair with the side fades and a bright yellow jacket, and every other character you could pick out of a crowd as well. In other words, they don't all look like this. Instead, each one has a very specific way they conduct themselves in relation to the others of the group, and in turn, this makes them really stand out from one another. But here's the thing, the story is where things really get good, but also where I think it had the most problems. Everything is exciting, speeding up as David becomes an Edgerunner and his group begins to infiltrate the layers of Arasaka. The thing is, I couldn't help but feel that 10 episodes is not nearly enough to tell this story. Because of the short runtime, a lot of the concepts and plot lines had to be majorly condensed, leading to some of the middle installments feeling kinda random as hell at points. Some storylines will begin to occur with not much prior information, like Maine's very quick descent into cyberpsychosis in a single episode, David's developing a relationship with Lucy and the team in the earlier parts of the show, or the time skip to when David's body is mostly implants and he's made a name for himself and assumed Maine's position in the group. The narrative skips felt abridged and kinda jarring, to the point where a lot of the plot was left up to the viewer to decide what happened, and it was a bit immersion breaking at times. And I don't think this is all really Trigger's fault. They were simply not given enough episodes to develop important parts of the narrative, and as a result some of the story is muddled in the final product. In fact, this is just a small part of a much bigger issue with anime as a whole, mainly overworked and underpaid animators having to churn out brutal schedules with reduced episodes, budgets, and resources, though I suppose that's a big conversation in itself, that I could definitely make another video on. In any case, I will say that despite the narrative inconsistencies and density of plot, nothing hugely impeded my overall interest or my enjoyment of the show. I just wish there were more episodes to expand on things. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels that way. Now, I really have to say that Edgerunners is big on atmosphere. It really takes the feeling of Night City from the game and translates it near flawlessly into the anime. The color palettes reflect the depressing but sometimes beautiful artificial nature of the city, with deep blues, grays, and blacks accenting this fact. In contrast, many of the characters wear bright, expressive clothing that helps to contrast the scenes even more and make things look more dynamic. And the music is all great. The opening is so catchy that I don't ever want to skip it, and the ending is a beautifully melancholic song as well. So if you like good music that fits the tone of the show well, this one's got it in the bag. I guess with me, the biggest thing is how I feel a connection to the struggles that the characters go through in this anime. One of the hardest things in media can be to make someone care about the story, and I have to say this show pulled it off quite well actually. I really cared about the characters in the story by the end. David's descent into cyberpsychosis, haunted by the people he killed and unable to protect many of those he loved, fuels the entire later part of the narrative, and I have to say it works really well for what it is. As many people as he did kill, and it was a lot, trust me, I still ended up hoping for the best for David and his friends. Rebecca's death, I think, surprised me more than anything else because of how abrupt it was, but then again I suppose her brother's was too. Despite large amounts of plot armor, only a few characters made it out of the show alive, and none completely unscathed. I thought Lucy going to the moon and the solemn remembrance of David was touching, and though I was sad that David and her couldn't be together at the end, it made sense that once he overused on implants, he wasn't going to be able to go back. And finally at the end, he was able to be in peace and die knowing that Lucy was safe, and that she would go on to do what she wanted with her life. So I'm glad to say that this show as a whole is a complete gem. It's definitely one of the best anime I've seen this year, and though it's not over yet, I do hope this brews a lot more interest in the Cyberpunk universe. Because this show is much more than just an advertisement for a game. It's a show I think everyone who loves dark and heartfelt narratives should experience. So I want to hear from everybody in the comments about what you think about the show, what you think about the game actually as well. What are your favorite characters? How do you like the music in the show? How do you like the art direction? How do you feel about Trigger as a studio? Any of those things. As always, like, subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.